Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Brought to you by the good people at CACI, the Center for American Culture and Ideas. Ant, what's new and exciting in your world this week?
I want to start off with some email from a couple of friends, Eugene Makovic and Joel Fox. They both write in response to our discussion of the FDA. Eugene says, "We beekeepers have to deal with the state health departments that require honey to be bottled in inspected kitchens, even though bacteria cannot even live in honey and no one is getting sick from it in states that don't regulate it." He goes on, "I discovered this a few years ago in Missouri when a local inspector pulled my honey from a store shelf. I went to the legislature in 2015 and got this ridiculous law changed. I wrote about it for both national beekeeping magazines, and we'll include the link to Eugene's article in the show notes. Go and read it. And I could tell you from personal experience that I ran into this as well. Many years ago, my wife brewed beer, and this was before craft brewery became a thing in this country. And we looked into starting a brewery. And the laws required that you use chlorinated water to be processed and all this stuff. In effect, you do things to the water that makes it worse than what you would get with regular, just straight up filtered water. It was our understanding at the time that there's nothing that can grow in beer that's harmful to people. The worst that'll happen is it'll make the beer taste bad. Nonetheless, I go on. Joel Fox from Canada wrote us on the same topic. He says, "Just listened to your FDA episode and enjoyed it. You make the point that when approving drugs, the FDA can kill by withholding approval. I would also make the point that the government can also kill through approval. Canada approved the marketing of thalidomide, and it had tragic results that you spoke about in the episode. Is it not likely," Joel asks, "that government approval emboldens physicians and consumers who might otherwise be more cautious with new medications?" And that's an excellent point that I had not considered.
Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable point, and I think, well, of course that happens. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here. I do like the idea of people who know better testing things to make sure that they're safe and reasonable for us to use. I'm just never altogether sure what form that should take at the end of the day, right? When we're looking at market answers or authoritarian answers, well, you know, you and I both know that there's no one-size-fits-all answer for these sorts of problems. And that's what makes it so hard, right? We can have our ideological priors, and we all do. I'm not crazy enough to sit here and say, this is the way it must always happen because no other way can work properly.
Yeah, and I think it gets even more complicated than that when we realize that there is no such thing as a safe anything, food or drug or anything else. We talk about it that way, that we want it to be safe versus not safe, as if it's binary, and it isn't. Yeah. Nothing can be 100% safe. So the question is, how much pain do you want to go through to push that envelope of safe from 95% to 96% or whatever the numbers are?
And, you know, as I often do, as you were saying these idiotic things that you just said, I was sitting here thinking, well, counterexample, come on, let's have it. Oh, water's always safe. But we all know water's not always safe. Yeah. You can die if you drink too much water too quickly.
Sure, yeah.
And some moron dies from, I think they call it water intoxication, every year or so, typically when a bunch of morons at a radio station have a water drinking contest, not realizing that somebody always dies when they do this. And, you know, we're right back to square one every time. If you're looking for that thing that will always be safe if you just get it right, you're off on a search for fool's gold. Yep. You're not going to find what you're looking for. All right, well, I mean, that was all well and good.
But I'm not even at my quick hit yet.
So you yammer on and yammer on and yammer on, but you haven't actually done what you came here to do. Do I have that right?
Well, it's a service to our listeners. The more they hear of me, the less they have to listen to you.
I'll go.
Marco Rushton of Constance Bay, Canada, recently lost his bid to recover $570,000 from the Ottawa Hospital. Mr. Rushton was diagnosed with a cerebral aneurysm in April 2020. Such things need to be dealt with quickly because a cerebral aneurysm, that's a ballooning of a vessel in the brain, can burst at any time, and with the bursting comes pretty much instant death. Mr. Rushton went to the Ottawa hospital for treatment, but the hospital couldn't give him a timeline for surgery. Partly this was due to complications due to COVID, and we did an episode on the unintended consequences of government responses to COVID back in 2020 or early 2021. We said at the time, people will die of maladies that in normal times they would survive simply because the hospitals diverted their resources to treating COVID instead of treating these other things. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. We're just saying that it's an unintended consequence. Mr. Rushton not only couldn't get treatment for his brain aneurysm, his doctors couldn't even tell him when he would get treatment. So he goes to Johns Hopkins. On July 10, he undergoes the procedure to correct the aneurysm. He had this surgery done in the U.S. less than 1 month after he was refused treatment in Canada because they had no idea when they could see him. Now, Mr. Rushton pays taxes for Canada's, quote, free healthcare that his Canadian hospital could not provide. So he sued the hospital for the cost of the surgery at Johns Hopkins. The appeal panel that heard his case ruled against him, and I'll put the link in the show notes and you can read the details about what's going on there, and he may be able to appeal further. But the point is this: nothing is free. If you don't pay in dollars, you'll pay in taxes, or you'll pay in time, or you'll pay in aggravation, or you'll pay in risk, or you'll pay some other way. But you will pay. And typically, when you pay in something other than dollars, the cost is greater than what it would be if you had simply paid in dollars. So those who extol the benefits of government-sponsored healthcare tend only to talk about one side of the equation. They talk about how everyone will be able to go to the hospital and not be bankrupted by costly procedures. This is true, but you will pay in higher taxes. If you take our VA hospital system as an example, you'll pay in quality. You'll pay in time waiting to be admitted for your procedure, and as Mr. Rushton discovered, that wait can mean you risk paying with your life.
Look, anybody who's ever lived in or adjacent to a socialized healthcare system knows that the waiting lists can be very, very long.
Yep.
That's just the nature of the thing. And I think people get angry with us when we say that there's no easy answer here, because they desperately want easy answers. But there is no easy answer here. Healthcare is a scarce resource and it's expensive. There's nothing you can do that will make it not those things.
But there's plenty you can do to make it more expensive.
You can make it more those things, but you can't make it not those things. And that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
It may be the case that waving your governmental magic wand around makes things much, much worse. That is often the case. And people seem to want to believe, for some reason, that there is always a correct answer. That in the end, what we're always dealing with are technical questions. Right? That if we just adjust everything correctly, then we get great answers. But it might not be the case that these are technical questions.
Yeah, the physics analogy is perpetual motion. These people that talk about perpetual motion on YouTube, it's always, well, if you just tweak this a little bit, you'll get the thing to work. It's always some little tweak.
And you won't.
Yeah,
because
and the thing never works.
That's how it goes. Anyway, speaking of things that never work, you and I, we kind of dabble around in the economics world, me a lot more than you in most meaningful respects, but, I'll save my insults for a later day. It's kind of funny, right, when people realize that you work in or near or with economics in any way, the first thing they want to talk about is where they should invest.
Yes, exactly.
As if we're all experts in the stock market, and nothing could be further from the truth. Most of us have no clue about the stock market. That's why economists and investment professionals are not the same group of people.
Right, yes.
What I do find, Ant, is that while I never really know what's going to work well, what people should invest in, my God, do I know what they shouldn't invest in. Do I know that in spades? And there's a company out there that has gotten my attention, and I wonder if it's gotten yours. See, Antony and I, we never talk about these sorts of things prior to coming on to record, But are you paying attention to Trump media?
Something about him selling Bibles?
No.
Are they signed Bibles?
Yeah, Jesus came and signed all the Bibles. No, and although that reminds me, once I saw on Craigslist a guy was selling a copy of Plato's Republic autographed by the author.
Oh my God, that's great.
I didn't even know where
I almost
to
want to
begin.
buy one just to be able to show it around.
Yeah, no. Trump Media is the company that houses Truth Social, his Twitter replacement.
I have no idea what this is.
Well, yeah, you and I never signed up for accounts over on Truth Social, but there is the Donald Trump version of Twitter. And unlike all of his other grifts, this company was brought public. So now you can research it.
You're kidding me. You can buy stock in this thing?
You can. You shouldn't, but you can. And how do I know you shouldn't? Well, it's been trading for a week and it's already lost over half of its value. Right? It's gone from $80 and some amount at open to 40-ish or lower. I mean, by the time this episode goes out, it might be worth literally nothing. It's likely to be a very fast ride to being worth nothing. They lost $54 million last year.
I've got to contradict you here, James.
Please.
The closer we get to the election, assuming it happens, the more likely it is that he's going to win. That stock is going to go through the roof. I bet you it will.
Want to bet? You and me right now?
All right. What do you want to bet?
It showed up on the market at 80. It's down to about 40. What do you think? Through the roof would be 100, right?
Let's take 40 as a starting point.
Why would we take 40? Why would
Well, because
we take 80?
you said it's going to go to zero. I
You
said it's
said
going to
through the roof.
All right. And you said to zero.
Let's call it this. 0 to infinity. That's the stock range, right?
Cut it in half.
Yeah. What's half of infinity? It's infinity. Yeah, we're going to have to arrive at an over-under on this. And given that it's at 40 now, it came on market at 80. The downward pressure is clear. You claim there's upward pressure that we're not seeing. I suspect that means that the over-under is going to have to be 60. That seems about right, doesn't it?
All right. Let's do this. Let's do $20 either direction. So anything less than
I thought we were wagering here.
We are, but I'm going to make room for an indeterminate because I'm a statistician. So anything above 60, I win. Anything below 20, you win. Anything in the range, we leave it indeterminate.
Not 20, 40.
So anything below 40
Sure.
is you win.
Yeah. Anything above 60, you win.
Whoa, no. You don't get $20 on the upside.
You're the one that came up with this little scheme. I'm giving it to you. Under 40, I win. Over 60, you win.
No, over 40, I win. Under 40, you win.
Then I'm going to require odds.
See, this is interesting. What you're doing here is agreeing with me that there's an upside here.
And what I'm trying to do is extract the most amount of money from you.
Yeah, and given that I don't like to wager, I can play this game all day.
I'm sitting in Las Vegas right now. Anyway,
That's a confound.
let me continue because maybe you'll change your mind. Literally every investment professional who goes on to comment about this stock laughs, wonders what idiots are buying it because it will go out of business in the not too distant future. I think there's nearly wholesale agreement on that. But here's the most interesting part, because the first thought I had was, okay, the grift here is to pump up the price by extolling the virtues of this nonsense company to all of his many followers, right, who believe everything he says, selling it to them, driving the share price up on a bunch of small sales, and then watching him dump his shares into the open market to cover his legal bills.
Right.
But here's the thing. He's not allowed to dump his shares for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be worthless by the time he can sell any of his shares.
I don't know, James. If he gets elected, I bet you I bet you that pushes up. I cannot see it going bankrupt if he's elected.
Well, okay. I say it goes bankrupt in the next 4.5 years. You say it doesn't.
Well,
No, wait a second. You say it doesn't. So I'll give you that period of time at the end of a Trump presidency. It's only operative if he wins. At the end, if this company is still alive, I'll pay you off. And if the moment it goes bankrupt, you pay me.
I think our listeners should tune in later rather than us boring them with our back and forth, because I wouldn't give you 4.5 years.
Why the hell not?
Because toward the end of his presidency, the thing is going to tank for the same reason it's looking like it's going to tank now. The only reason for that thing to have value is because he's in the White House.
Well, I leave it to our listeners to declare what the correct wager would be, and then we'll consider them next week. So
we're going to get inundated with people looking to take you up on your wager.
But that's all right. You love reading emails, so go ahead, everybody. Write lots of emails and send them off to that address Ant gives you at the end of every podcast. He loves reading these things, so go ahead. But Truth Social did lose $58 million last year. $58 million. The only people who made any money on it at all were the people who draw salaries. So we'll leave it at that, which brings us, of course, to the foolishness of the week. That was not the foolishness of the week. The foolishness of the weekend, I'm going back to libraries. And you can always tell, right, when we're looking at an election year, because the headlines get progressively more breathless, I guess progressively less breathy, if you want to go the other way on that. And what do we hear all the time? We hear about book banning. And, I walked into a bookstore because I still like bookstores. And I walked into one not too long ago, and there was a big wall at the far end that said banned books, and they were all for sale. Well, if they're all banned, why are they for sale?
Makes them more interesting.
Oh, for crying out loud, I think somebody's missed the very nature of what a book banning is. I just want to point out, I'm looking at a Wall Street Journal headline, I believe from today, April 8th. Yep, today. Book ban campaigns hit 4,240 titles last year. Here are the top 10 targets. Well, if a library decides not to buy a book, not to put a book in its collection, that doesn't mean that book is banned. What that means is that that book is not in that library. And there are any number of perfectly good reasons for a library to decide that this book doesn't belong on the shelves. And I'll point out that you and I wrote a book. It is not on every library's shelf in the United States.
Ooh, it's a banned book.
It's a banned book. That's right. But you and I both know that's ridiculous. It's not banned. That's asinine. Now, when a librarian says, I think this book will offend the sensibilities of 90% of the patrons of this library, that smells more like a ban than them saying words and numbers, cooperation and coercion, what do we need this book for? One sounds more ban-ish than the other, but is it a ban? I don't think it is.
I don't see why it would be, yeah.
Yeah, if that book is still for sale, it clearly hasn't been banned.
And the thing to remember, a library has finite space, and there are way more books in existence than could ever fit in a library.
And finite resources.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'm pretty sure that there are any number of librarians out there who use their own criteria instead of the criteria of their clientele to decide what should and should not be on the shelves. And, well, I mean, okay, somebody's got to have the answer. You hire a librarian to do this job. Who else would you expect would answer that question?
Right.
If you get an answer that you don't like, it might not be because that librarian is banning books. It might be because that librarian is doing his job. I don't know what else to say about this. In the end, there's going to be some messy business here. There's always going to be some messy business because you're making choices about what should and should not be on the shelves. Well, there's no way to make everybody happy, but to consistently say that we're banning books in the United States when that is literally almost never true. I don't think it does anybody any good. The foolishness of the week. You can go read all about it in the Wall Street Journal.
For one-stop shopping for all things James and Ant, visit our website, wordsandnumbers.org. We give a special shout-out to our Patreon sponsors who help us keep the lights on. If you'd like to contribute, go to patreon.com/wordsandnumbers.
Which, Ant, brings us to the terrible, terrible topic that we have this week.
Right, we have 6 minutes after all of that introduction.
I guess you're going to have to edit some of that out then, aren't you? The main topic, and Ant and I go back and forth on this a lot, right? We have a lovely podcast, and some people listen to it. Ant, how popular is our podcast? The people might not realize.
We are now, I have to say, in all honesty, it's because of longevity, but we are in the top 0.5% of podcasts in the world.
That's right. So you, Joe Rogan. We're coming for you.
We're coming after you.
But look, we generally speaking don't use the podcast to get even with people who have f***ed us over. And I don't want to do that today either. I am going to vent my spleen a little bit about some customer service that I have not been getting.
As opposed to our other 370 episodes? I wish our listeners could see your face right now.
I want to point out that Antony Davies occasionally tells me that he's never been punched. And A, I believe it, because if he had, he'd know to shut up in times like this. But B, I don't believe it. How could you go this long and not having gotten a punch in your mouth?
I'm a generally likable guy, James.
That's really not correct.
I know you wouldn't understand that.
You're right, I don't understand it. I have to deal with you more than every other human being except your poor wife.
And that's all the time we have this week on Words and Numbers.
This is all the time we have this week on Numbers. Antony Davies' favorite podcast. No. My phone is dying. How do I know this? People call me on it and the calls don't come through. And I try to call out and it doesn't work. So the one thing a phone does, makes phone calls, receives phone calls, mine won't do. So I said a crazy thing. I said, Self, you need to buy a new phone. So I hopped online, and the nice people over at Google Fi, my wireless carrier, this is not an advertisement for them, as you will soon see. The nice people over at Google Fi said, if you would like this Google Pixel 8, you can have $350 off. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I love to save $350, and I bought that phone. And they said, James, we're going to send this out FedEx right to your door. Don't you worry. And that's what happened. And when I went to get the box with my phone in it, it felt kind of light. Mm-hmm. And I thought, those new Pixels, those are some impressive technology. It's like a feather. And I opened up the box, and the pictures will be in the show notes of what I found. I opened up what was obviously a retaped box. And then I pulled out the box for the phone on the inside, and the box for the phone was simply empty. It was broken. Some weasel, and I'm betting that it was some weasel at FedEx, because they had control of that phone for the lion's share of the time, right? The Google people handed it to FedEx, and then FedEx brought it to my house. Well, I didn't get a phone. I called. That, Antony, put me on an odyssey, because what I came to learn is that Google, once a very responsive wireless company, they have made it all but impossible to pick up a phone and call customer service. It's all but impossible. I was able to find the number, and I called customer service, not once, not twice, but many times. And of course, because I have a defective phone, things aren't working well. By the time I was able to get through and explain what my problem was, I realized that we had a very deep language barrier, because the call centers are apparently all in India, which I also understand, but that causes a bit of a problem when you have a complicated issue and you want to explain to somebody what's going on. And what I kept saying was, somebody stole my phone, and what they kept hearing was, there's something wrong with your phone.
Yes, it doesn't exist.
And this was rather difficult. And I thought, well, all right, I'm not getting anywhere here. Let's try the online chat. But apparently the people at the end of the online chat are the exact same people from the call center. And they kept saying, yes, we see that your phone arrived today. And I said, well, a box arrived today, but there was no phone in the box. And nobody would take this seriously. And I thought, okay, clearly I've made a technical error. What I needed to do here was call FedEx.
Right.
Their problem, let's deal with them. Except you can't call FedEx either. What the hell is going on in this world? And I just, you and I talk a lot about disruptive companies, and Amazon is typically the one that comes up. I want to read something that Jeff Bezos said in the very early days of Amazon. And we've talked about this once before, but I think it bears repeating. He said, if you make customers unhappy in the physical world, they might each tell 6 friends. If you make customers unhappy on the internet, they can each tell 6,000.
That's about right.
No, it's not, because there are way more than 6,000 people going to hear this episode. So Google sells phones and they hire FedEx to ship those phones. But nobody gives a that somebody at FedEx steals the phones. How do I know this? After complaining, I got 3 emails today saying that they had closed the case.
Oh, FedEx closed it.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask me what happened.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us.
I have no idea. They didn't tell me.
Okay, so a couple of things here. Someone's going to say, yeah, but maybe someone just took it out of your mailbox. And I would say, no, if they're going to take it, they take the whole thing. They wouldn't take the time to cut it open.
Let me stop you right there. The FedEx truck came. I was sitting out on my back porch smoking a cigar. I saw it drive away. I stood up. I walked out. I got that box literally 1 minute after the driver pulled away.
Okay.
I looked at the box, and it was no longer sealed the way a new box is sealed. It had obviously been retaped from the outside. Mm-hmm. So somebody along that chain of custody took the box, sliced it open, opened the phone box inside, took out the phone, pocketed the phone, put the phone box back in, and retaped the outer box.
So here's the thing, and this would be a Google Fi thing. I don't know this for certain, but I'm 99% certain that regardless of what SIM chip whoever has it put in the phone, it would send its whatever serial number it has. And so Google could say, oh yes, here is that particular phone that we sent you. Here it is. We've located it.
Yep, that would be my thought as well. Nobody mentioned the possibility of ever doing anything, which is the bizarre part. I finally got on the Google Fi chat yet again yesterday, and I said, look, I've been waiting a few days now, and I've heard that the case is closed, but I still don't have a phone. I also don't have $700. And they said, oh, sure, we've already sent you another phone. And I said, well, that's funny because I have not received a shipping notice. And they said, oh, it takes 1 to 2 days. That was 2 days ago, and I still haven't gotten it. And I said, I don't want FedEx shipping this phone. And they said, well, why not? I said, are you paying any attention at all? Somebody there clearly stole the last one. Why would I turn around and want to use them again? Because that's usually how businesses are punished when they screw up. And this was the official answer from Google Fi. Don't worry about it. We promise it will get there. And I said, well, I didn't worry about it last time, and it didn't get here. So what are we promising now? It's not so much that I'm out of phone. I am. I'm sure I'll get one at some point. The real question is, where is accountability in the system now? Right? Who can you call to say, look, I have a problem with your thing that I paid money for? And it's becoming very difficult to locate that person who you're supposed to call to get your issue resolved.
Right.
And this is a very dangerous ground for businesses to walk. You might recall when Amazon first came out, they were hyper responsive. Any problem you had with anything to do with an Amazon shipment, you got resolution almost immediately from a human being.
Right.
Now, as they scaled up, you're going to have to, I think, make peace with the fact that they're not going to be as good. But it's not that they're not as good, it's that they don't play that game at all anymore. Recently, I got a video game system that didn't ship with a dongle that connects the controller to the game. No big deal, probably a 30-cent part. It took me 3 months to get a replacement, and they couldn't send me the 30-cent part. They had to send me new controllers from China.
Right.
Right? I mean, it took 3 months before I could even hope to use this game. And I know you've had recent dreadful problems with a phone, right?
Well, I did have last year with my phone. My recent thing is my Sony earbuds. I've sent them back twice because they didn't charge. And it took so long. Finally, when I got the third ones, I said, heck with it. I'll leave it plugged in all the time.
I mean, the real question is, how do you get satisfaction when something goes sideways? Because you used to be able to call your credit card company and say, look, don't pay them.
Right.
And that's no longer a rubber stamp.
Yeah, but I have to say, I'll say something good here about American Express, which I've used for many years. Several times over a couple of decades, I've had a problem like you're describing that becomes irresolvable. That I've talked to whoever it is, Google or FedEx or what have you, and there's nothing happening there. And American Express, no questions asked, handles the thing. In fact, they give me the credit before they've even finished handling whatever they handle on their end.
Yeah, and I have had good luck with American Express on that. My primary card is a MasterCard, and I've had not nearly as good luck with MasterCard. So, you know, there's a couple of things here. Businesses will, sooner or later, pay the price for these sorts of things. Oh, and to make matters even better, as I was in the middle of all of this, only because I got shafted out of a $700 phone did I realize that Google Fi was raising my rates. Because
on the phone that you don't have.
on the phone that I don't have. Because they posted it on their website, but did they send me an email notification, a text, a piece of physical mail? No. They just left an announcement up on the website. You, James, we're going to charge you more as of this day, whether you saw this or not. And look, Google Fi was once a joy to do business with. Whenever I needed something, I would just call them. It would be resolved in minutes. And I thought, now that's how a wireless company should operate. Because I had just gotten through dealing with Verizon where everything was a state secret. I could never figure out why my bill was what it was. There were categories of things on the bill that they refused to explain. And I thought, I can't deal with this. This is ridiculous. Oh, look, here's a better option. Well, now I need another better option. I predict that we're going to see a new class of business emerge, and it's going to be like a concierge service that will run interference for you between you and all the companies you pay to do various things.
Right.
Now it's becoming so annoying and so time-consuming to get anything resolved, and I'm sure this is part of the business plan, right? Just make it so difficult to get things resolved that they give up.
I can make an argument. I'm not saying that I approve of what they're doing, but I can understand it as an economist. If you have so many customers and the instance like you're describing is rare enough, it may not be worth it for them to rectify the situation.
I think that's right. And here's the weird part, right? I have found that the people at the end of the telephone are just not helpful. I'm not saying they don't want to be helpful. I think they probably do.
Yeah.
But they can't be. And I was asking the woman on the Google, I was like, well, are you telling me you literally can't do anything? And she said, yeah. Well, why are we talking then?
Right.
You're just here to waste my time, so I'll give up. And one thing I've noticed, and people give me a hard time about this from time to time, I have noticed that if you really need customer assistance, if you need it, If something has gone hopelessly wrong and you need a problem addressed, Twitter is the correct answer.
Yes.
Because the companies are so worried that their brand names will be tarnished in public, where, as Jeff Bezos said, people might be able to tell 6,000 people, not 6. Well, they're actually worried about that. People write and they say all the time, why do you keep complaining on Twitter about lousy service? The answer is because the companies rush to fix it.
Right.
If and only if I complain there.
With some interesting exceptions, and one was a case that occurred to me. I mentioned it at the time, maybe 2-3 years ago. I had in the backyard a wire I was 90% sure was the Comcast cable coming into the house. That was, of course, on the telephone wires, but hanging down, so that you could touch it from the ground. Now, of course, it's not electrified, but it's attached to things that are and whatnot. Anyway, I called Comcast many times. They wouldn't do anything. So I did what you're describing. I put it on Twitter, and the whole thing of, I called Comcast. They're not doing anything. I'm putting this here. Within, I want to say, an hour, I was contacted. Not by Comcast, but by scammers pretending to be Comcast.
Yeah, I don't know what the grift is here. I don't know what their angle is, but I got contacted by people who claimed to be from FedEx. And how do I know they're not from FedEx? When I look at their bio on their Twitter profile, they've misspelled things and there are grammar errors all over the place. So yeah,
and they want you to pay $30 to resolve the problem.
We never got that far because it's clear. But it does my heart some good to see that companies do actually care about their public image. When something shows up where other people can see the complaint, they rush to fix it. Now, that's second best. They should rush to fix it because that's the right thing to do. And their customers deserve good treatment. But if you can't have that, at least you can have good treatment because you might say foul things on Twitter. And we're escalating here, in the words of Google Fi and FedEx. We're going to escalate this complaint to the level of podcast now and see if anybody gives a at FedEx or Google Fi about this, because frankly, I wouldn't do business with either one of these companies right now. Seeing how they approach these sorts of things, I would advise everyone to go find other people to service your phone and to satisfy your shipping needs. And another thing I found out, there's a difference, and you might not know this, between FedEx Ground and FedEx Express. They're two completely different companies.
Oh, are they really?
And I'm dealing with FedEx Ground, which isn't so great. FedEx Express is apparently quite good. Okay.
Well, this is the beauty of a profit system, as our friend Howie Bacher often says. It's not profit system, it's a profit loss system.
That's right, profit loss.
And the beauty is that you can do what you're doing. At the least, you can walk away. At most, you can start to talk about it and have other people walk away, and that hits the companies at their bottom line.
And I hope it does. You pay $700 for something. Do you think you didn't pay for the shipping wrapped up in that cost? Of course you did. I paid for a phone and shipping to me. I got neither. Who did? Clearly somebody who works at FedEx. You can't tell me that some along the chain of possession didn't see that box, said Google Fi on it, said, that's a phone and I know it, cut it open real quick, pocketed the phone, and put the box back on the line for the rube down the line, me, to receive. Of course that's what happened. And do a little digging. Go do a Google search on this. All of a sudden you see people who lose a lot of laptops this way, right? Anything expensive that's obvious from the box it's coming in, there's a problem here. There's a problem here. Now, I'm pretty sure FedEx could figure out who took that phone within 5 minutes, given all the cameras they've got at every point on the line and how closely they can track the possession. But to this point, on a phone that I ordered well over a week ago now, nobody's made right on it. Nobody at all. So I guess for the online discussion this week, who should I be patronizing. Who should I bring my wireless business to? Understanding I don't want to pay a fortune. I just want unlimited talk, text, and data. I want it to work, and I want to be treated like a valued customer. None of which is happening with Google Fi.
And that's all the time we've got this week on Words and Numbers. Until next time,
Send us email, wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com.
try to be nice to one person who doesn't deserve it. Till next week, can't take it easy.
See you next week, James.